The NASCAR antitrust lawsuit enters week 2. Let's talk about it.
A courtroom in Charlotte just heard something that's shaking up the entire racing world. An economist stood up and said, NASCAR owes race teams $364 million. Not an estimate. Not a guess. An actual calculation based on years of financial data. This whole mess started last September when NASCAR handed teams a charter agreement with a same-day deadline. Sign it by midnight or you're out. Most teams caved and signed. 2 didn't. Michael Jordan's 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports said no and filed a lawsuit instead. Fast forward to now. We're in the second week of trial and things are getting heated. The judge is annoyed because everything's moving too slow. Lawyers are filing objections at 3 in the morning. Witnesses are taking entire days on the stand. Nobody knows when this thing will actually end. Edward Snyder took the stand Monday. He's an economics professor who used to work at the Department of Justice. His job in this case was figuring out how much money teams lost because of NASCAR's business practices. He spent hours going through his calculations. Snyder looked at Formula One as a comparison. F1 teams get 45% of the sport's revenue. NASCAR teams, 25%. He said that gap represents money teams should be getting but aren't. He calculated that 2311 lost $215 million. Front Row lost $148 million. Add those together and you get the big number everyone's talking about. But it gets bigger. Snyder said if you look at all 36 chartered teams from 2021 to 2024, they got shorted over $1 billion total. NASCAR's president Steve Phelps came in earlier to defend how they run things. He said the charter system helps teams by giving them guaranteed spots in races and steady income. He claimed NASCAR negotiated fairly with everyone. But that's not what team owners' private messages showed. During the discovery process, lawyers found texts between owners complaining about NASCAR's tactics. They were angry. They felt cornered. Yet they signed anyway because what else could they do? Jonathan Marshall runs the Race Team Alliance. That's the group representing all the team owners. He testified that 14 minutes after NASCAR sent out the final charter offer, he already knew the 3 biggest owners were signing. Joe Gibbs, Rick Hendrick, Roger Penske. Once those guys signed, Marshall knew it was over. No better deal was coming. The charter system itself is at the heart of this fight. NASCAR created it back in 2016. Before that, teams had to qualify for every single race based on speed. Sometimes good teams missed races because they had a bad qualifying run. The charter changed that. If you own a charter, you're guaranteed a spot in all 36 races. You also get a share of NASCAR's revenue. Sounds great on paper. The problem is what's in the fine print. These charters aren't permanent like NFL or NBA franchises. NASCAR can change the rules whenever they want. They can even shut down the whole charter system if they feel like it. Teams don't really own anything. They're basically renting. And that rental comes with strings attached. The agreement NASCAR wanted teams to sign had a release clause. Sign this and you give up the right to sue NASCAR. Ever. For anything. That's what made Jordan and Bob Jenkins refuse to sign. The legal argument comes down to antitrust law. Those are the rules that stop companies from becoming monopolies and crushing competition. The teams say NASCAR breaks those rules in several ways. NASCAR owns most of the major racetracks. The France family started the sport in 1948 and they still control it. Between the France family properties and Speedway Motorsports, they own almost every track on the schedule. NASCAR also negotiates all the TV deals. They run the whole operation top to bottom. After the charter system started, NASCAR made exclusive deals with racetracks. These agreements say tracks hosting NASCAR can't work with competing racing series. Before 2016, NASCAR just had year-to-year contracts with tracks. Now these deals lock tracks in for years. Snyder said this was deliberate. NASCAR wanted to make sure no rival series could start up, and it worked. There's nowhere else for teams to go if they want to race stock cars at this level. NASCAR has them trapped. There's also the next-gen car. NASCAR owns all the intellectual property for it. Teams can't make their own modifications or develop their own parts the way they used to. Everything's controlled. Put it all together and you have what the lawsuit calls a monopoly. Teams can't negotiate because they have no leverage. They can't threaten to race somewhere else because there is nowhere else. They either take what NASCAR offers or they don't race. NASCAR argues this control is necessary. Having one sanctioning body keeps the rules fair and consistent. They say this structure is what made NASCAR successful. Take away that control and you might destroy what makes the sport work. Judge Kenneth Bell is losing patience with how long everything's taking. Monday morning was supposed to start at 9. It started at 9:30 because Bell had to deal with objections that came in over the weekend. One batch arrived at 2:55 in the morning. He spent an hour sorting through legal arguments before the jury could even come in. Snyder was on the stand almost the entire day. His cross-examination isn't finished. He'll be back Tuesday. After him, there are still huge names left to testify. Steve Phelps for NASCAR, Richard Childress, one of the most respected team owners in the sport's history, Jim France, NASCAR's chairman and the man who runs everything. Bell asked the jury if they'd be willing to stay an extra hour each day for the rest of the week. He's desperate to move things along, but with this many witnesses and this much evidence, nobody knows when it'll end. Michael Jordan showed up Friday to testify. That brought cameras and national media attention. Jordan talked about being a NASCAR fan since he was a kid, but as an owner, he saw problems that needed fixing. He said other owners had tried for years to negotiate better terms and got nowhere. He felt somebody had to step up and challenge NASCAR directly. Jordan's not afraid of a fight. He's been through battles in the NBA. He understands how sports leagues work and what franchise ownership should look like. In basketball, owning a team means something. Those franchises are worth billions, and that value keeps growing. NASCAR charters don't work that way. Other team owners are stuck watching from the sidelines. They signed the charter agreement so they can't join the lawsuit now, but you can bet they're paying attention. If 2311 and Front Row win, it could force NASCAR to renegotiate with everyone. That would help all the teams get better deals. Snyder made a point about NASCAR's finances. They're not broke, not even close. At the end of 2024, NASCAR had $2.2 billion in assets. Goldman Sachs valued the whole operation at $5 billion. They have excellent credit. From 2021 to 2024, NASCAR made $250 million a year in profit. The France family took $400 million in distributions during that period. The money is there. Snyder compared NASCAR to the PGA Tour. When LIV Golf came along and started offering huge contracts to golfers, the PGA had to respond. They found new revenue sources and increased player compensation to stay competitive. Snyder said NASCAR has the same financial flexibility. They just haven't had to use it because teams have no other options. This case is about more than $364 million. It's about power. Who controls NASCAR? Is it a sport where teams have a voice in how things run? Or is it a private business owned by one family that lets teams participate on whatever terms they choose? If the teams win, NASCAR might have to make charters permanent. Revenue splits might change. Teams might get more freedom to run their operations. The whole power structure could shift. If NASCAR wins, nothing changes. Maybe things get even more locked down because a court said their system is legal. Teams would have less leverage than ever. This trial will probably go on for weeks. Whoever loses will appeal. The final resolution could take years. But the relationship between NASCAR and its teams is already damaged. These teams felt so squeezed that suing was their only option. That tells you everything about how broken things have become. Bob Jenkins runs Front Row because he loves racing, not because it makes money. He's been at it over 20 years and never turned a profit. You can't run a business like that forever. Eventually, something has to give. Jordan and Hamlin say 2311 makes money, but mostly because Jordan brings in sponsors other teams can't get. That's not a model that works for everyone else. The $364 million demand is the headline grabbing everyone's attention. But the real question is what NASCAR looks like going forward. Does it stay a family-run operation with total control? Or does it evolve into something where teams are actual partners with real ownership stakes? Whatever Judge Bell decides will determine the answer. And that answer will shape NASCAR for the next decade.